Are you an independent musician feeling overwhelmed by the endless act of juggling creativity, business, and self-care? You're not alone. That's why I created the Artist Mind Map. The Artist Mind Map is a free blueprint designed to help you get clear on the route you need to take to attain your career goals in alignment to your artistic values. This is not just another random PDF page for the forgotten corners of your hard disk. It's a timeless roadmap you can use for decades to come. Think of it as a go-to overview to consult. When you grab your free mind map, you get exclusive access to a masterclass that will take your career to the next level. I use the same methodologies and systems for my high-end paying clients and students. So why am I giving it to you for free? Simple. I want to build a community of artists who can count on each other for safe spaces. Music saved my life. I believe that you have all that it takes to be the artist you were meant to be, if you're willing to put in the work. And more importantly, understanding what that work is. And the Artist Mind Map was designed to help you do exactly that. So if this resonates with you, go to artistmindmap.com and download this resource. artistmindmap.com. Why art is not a sport. The comparison of art to sport is a tempting notion and always tease out quite a few similarities. I can contend, being a part-time athlete of sorts, even though my practice as a martial artist, for example, or even a yogi, even though yoga doesn't technically qualify as athletics, but I do have some pretty intense physical practices which I am quite passionate about, in addition to being an artist and a musician, and I can contend there have been parallels. But all of this being said and done, as independent artists, at some point creativity will inevitably meet hustle, though I personally never resonated with that word. So this art versus sport analogy keeps blurring into confusion. On closer inspection though, my bet is, after you've heard this episode today, it'll reveal some major distinctions. Let's discuss. Welcome to another session solo cast. These solo casts were designed to help independent artists and musicians like you navigate the very complex labyrinth that is your artistic practice and career. They're based on empirical research and experiences of my own career as an independent musician and an educator and coach working with artists just like you. The primary aim behind these sessions is to offer accessibility to the kind of education many of us need to work with in order to forward ourselves in these very confusing times as empowered and independent artists in the truest sense of the word. To start off with, let's talk about discipline and dedication. Here's the thing. While both art and sport demand discipline, dedication, and even a touch of competitive spirit, I would argue that the essence of art is a completely different one. It lies in its boundless freedom and intrinsic value, qualities that set it apart from the more structured realm of sports. Now, mind you, some of the more passionate athletes, sports people I've been a fan of, people like Bruce Lee, although in my opinion he's more an artist than an athlete, or even Muhammad Ali. I know I'm citing a lot of martial artists here. I can't seem to think of an athlete who would fit into the comparison I'm trying to strike here, who's not a martial artist. That's my bad. But generally speaking, a lot of them might actually lean more towards the side of things which would argue for art being closer to athleticism or a sport. I'm not sure I did a great job of explaining what I was trying to get at there. But that being said, I am referring to standard formats of the trajectory an athlete takes, or a sportsman takes, or a sports person takes, and an artist does. Let's start by addressing the elephant in the room. Competition. In sports, competition is the very fabric that holds it together. One could argue anyway. Most athletes, to the best of my experience, I'm not an expert on sports, I'm not a sports expert, but most athletes, to the best of my experience, and sports experts measure success through quote-unquote victories, statistics, and records. The scoreboard, important word to note here, represents an unequivocal testament to the athlete's prowess. For artists, This would be a disastrous approach to measure their worth. Any competition involved in their practices is not just far more nuanced, but not really a quote-unquote goal in the first place. Sure, the music industry has its charts, awards, sales figures, but these metrics are mere byproducts of a deeper, more personal journey. If anything, I would argue that they always run the risk of being a divisive and somewhat distorted representation of art's meaningfulness in the first place. The kind of meaningfulness that is incredibly difficult, if not impossible, to measure with binary values, for lack of a better term. Case in point, one of my favorite artists of all time, Michelle Ndegeocello, I keep talking about her at every opportunity I get, waited decades before finally winning her first Grammy, and that was one of the most ironic Grammys to win. It was a part of a song by Robert Glasper where an excerpt of her speaking on the telephone happened to be on the song that won the Grammy. But this year, as you know, 2025, she won some major accolades in the whole Grammy award system. So either way, despite being openly hailed as one of the most influential artists of her time ever, Michelle had to wait decades before finally gaining the kind of industry standard, all-time favorite accolade most people seem to identify musical or artistic success with. Which is why I would contend art is an expression of the human experience and beyond, not a contest to be won, despite awards like these tend to give us the impression of. We need to talk about the subjectivity of excellence here. Let's consider the nature of excellence in sports, for example, versus art. In sports, and again, you will forgive me if I do come across as overgeneralizing a bit. Like I said, please accept my apologies in advance. I'm not a sports person. I'm not an expert on sports. So the only thing I can go with are some general rules I have observed through my own experiences and some of my friends who happen to be professional athletes. Excellence in athleticism is somewhat quantifiable. Debatable if when we get into a certain realm, but generally speaking, it is quantifiable. A runner's speed, for example, a gymnast's score, or a team's win-loss record are all considered definitive indicators of success. This excellence is inherently subjective in art, though. A piece of music that moves one person to tears might leave another absolutely and completely untouched. And the volatile and non-linear nature of this phenomenon is not a flaw. That's no flaw, but a feature, highlighting art's role in reflecting the diversity of the humanity which defines the whole artistic experience. That was one really long sentence. Either way, musicians and artists, or creative professionals, generally speaking, create from a place of personal truth. And aiming for universal approval is not the goal. Authentic connection is. Both buzzwordy kind of terminologies there, but I rest my case either way. Universal approval, conformity, these are not healthy goals for artists to set, but authentic connection always is. A safe bet, anyways. Then there's the role of technique and creativity. Both art and sport do demand rigorous practice and mastery of technique. In fact, this might be one of the most confusing aspects that end up blurring the lines between the somewhat sport-oriented approaches a lot of artists find themselves falling victim to. Yet, the role of creativity in each diverges significantly, though. Yeah. In sports, creativity can certainly enhance performance. Please don't let me give you the impression that that's something that I have a right to take away from passionate athletes. Think of a basketball player's innovative play or a figure skater's unique routine. Or a figure skater and figure skating generally is definitely very much in between the whole sport and art debate. Either way, though, it still operates within the boundaries of very stringent, established rules and objectives. For musicians, on the other hand, artists, creativity is the lifeblood of the craft. It's the spark that turns technique into transcendence. So the difference between playing a note and conveying an emotion is just that. That transcendence is the difference between the technique with which you're actually creating sound, playing a note, stroking a brush, creating a picture, and actually creating your message that is meant to connect with its audiences. So technique in art is merely a vehicle to facilitate a very boundless zone of creativity. This is where I'm going to use the journey over the destination analogy. Bear with for a second. Here's the thing with sports, athletics. The destination, be it a trophy, a title, or a record, is often thought of as the ultimate goal. The journey is important, needless to say, but it's the outcome that ultimately gets to define the success of the athlete. That changes in art. And as corny as it sounds, the journey really is the destination. Yes, I know you've probably read that on Instagram 96 million times by now. But seriously though, the process of creating, exploring, evolving as a practitioner in the arts really is where the true value lies. Those late night writing sessions, the experimental jams, and even the frustrating setbacks, they're all integral parts of the artistic journey for us artists. The destination is usually just a fleeting moment, in fact, or a series of many fleeting moments if we luck out. But if these fleeting moments, if they end up becoming our primary intent, it can be and has proven to be a somewhat addictive downward spiral. Whole different conversation, by the way. Maybe I'll do an episode on that. The journey, though, the process, the actual practice, hence the word artistic practice, practitioner of arts, I tend to be biased towards these terms in a positive way. I tend to use these terms more often, more than I do musician or artist. I like the usage of the word practitioner in the arts. I think it's a word that needs to make a comeback. There's a suggestion for a buzzword. That journey, that practice, that process, that is a lifetime. That is what, in my opinion, defines an artist. That is what the true artist, quote unquote, I know that sounds a little high-handed, but that is what the true artist is actually in it for. And I say this after 25 years of professional experience as a practicing artist. I watched so many come and go. And I say that with complete compassion from the bottom of my heart. This is not a judgment, an observation. If you've been following my work for a while, you'll know that I distinguish clearly between the two. An observation doesn't automatically qualify as a judgment. I'm not judging the people. I think making a clear call and deciding on pivoting or pursuing a different vocation or a career is an absolutely legitimate decision as long as it's something that's in alignment to your inner goals. But that being said, a lot of people who quote unquote give up tend to do so because they had somewhat unhealthy and poorly informed concepts of what success as an artist is in the first place. This is where holistic solutions for these pain points come in. You know I'm the holistic guy. I'm the founder of the Holistic Musician Academy, so you'll hear me use that word very often by now if you've been listening to my podcast. And there is a very specific reason I do that as well, because part of the reason so many of us tend to fall victim to the industrial trends and that victimhood is because there are so many apparently disconnected aspects we have to find a way to integrate into our lifestyle as artists that not being holistic is not really an option if you want to nurture a sustainable career as an option. So let's talk about some of these holistic solutions for these specific pain points I just addressed. Are you familiar with the idea of pain points, by the way? It tends to get used a lot by sales and marketing folks. But it's actually a very interesting point. Pain points are basically points, injuries, wounds that we tend to, chronic problems which end up being, I don't know if trauma is the right comparison to make with something like that, but basically points which start hurting. So sore points, I guess, and don't quote me on that. but generally chronic problems that we seem to be dealing with that we are in dire need of solutions for. Holistic solutions, 4 pain points. Understanding that art is not a sport, coming back to the context of today's episode, is crucial for addressing the unique challenges faced by independent creatives. The pressures of comparison and competition can lead to burnout and creative blocks in a manner that we simply do not need. So, embracing the subjective, journey-focused nature of art, on the other hand, can provide a healthier alternative. Here are a few suggestions how you can actually work on a holistic system to get this done. Number 1, redefine success. Easier said than done, but consider really setting your ass down and making a mission out of this. Redefine success. Look deeper than and ask yourself, what is your definition of success? Who defined it for you? And what are the factors that are informing this? Is it really your true inner voice that has defined success for you? Or is it a bunch of external stimuli that's ended up making one by default because you never actually took the conscious and proactive decision to, again, pardon my French, sit your ass down and do it yourself? That's number 1. Redefine success for one. Number 2, foster community over competition or collaboration over competition. Collaboration is the future. Competition is so yesterday in the artistic field. Build a supportive network of fellow musicians. Collaborate, share resources, celebrate each other's success. Your co-artist's success, assuming they're practicing in an authentic and benevolent and service-based manner. When I say service-based manner, I'm referring to the art of serving humanity, serving society through our art. Assuming that these are important points in their practice, celebrate their success, because believe me when I tell you their success, those kind of folks who are working on these terms, their success is your success, because they're contributing to an ecosystem where you will also thrive if you align to these principles. The true principles of creating art, which is serving society. Number 3, banal AF, but prioritize mental and emotional well-being. If you've been following my work for a while, you'll be hearing me banging on about this constantly. And I say this because I cannot compensate enough for the decades of music industrial jargon where nobody was. If you were good at what you did, you were just good at what you did. If you were struggling with whatever it is you were struggling, you just were a loser. No, but so many talented artists have lost their way just because they were misunderstood and nobody showed them the kind of support they needed for struggles which could have been resolved pretty easily. There's always 2 sides to the story. I can't comment on how proactivity in this specific theme could have made a difference. So again, this is not my place to judge, but if this resonates with you in some way, know that your practice is one that calls for your responsibility for your emotional and mental well-being as well. That's something you have to want to do first before you even reach out for support. Even reaching out for support is proactive, by the way. That's a proactive decision to make. And making art at the cost of your health and your well-being is not only not sustainable down the line, it's not just about the sustainability and your health, it's also about the art going down the drain. I've seen so many musicians try to follow that route, and eventually even the art that happens towards the end is kind of crap. Forgive me for being such a dick about the way I go about describing that. Okay. Wow. Tell me what you think, TL. Okay. Number 4, embrace failure as part of the process. Very connected, very related to number 1, which is really defining success. View setbacks and failures as opportunities for growth, because they are. Don't look at them as indicators. Pardon me for using the word don't. I actually don't really like the vibration of the word don't, but here's my recommendation. Consider looking upon them as opportunities for growth, as pointers for things you need to work on, rather than indicators of inadequacy. As long as you're working on your art on your terms, being authentic to your practice, you are enough. whatever it is you're doing will be adequate down the line. As long as you stay on the ball, stay focused, and just keep doing it. Believe me, this is not some self-help new age jargon. Believe me when I tell you, the most successful artists out there are the ones, with exceptions of course. The reason they succeed is this: to just stick to it. And not stick to making random stuff, but stick to a well-defined and aligned practice. So, to reiterate, view setbacks and failures as opportunities, not indicators of inadequacy. Failure is your friend. Scientists fail for a living. That's literally what they do. They just keep failing until they don't, and that is their success. We musicians, we could really take an example of that. Each misstep is a step towards mastery, which doesn't cancel out the whole idea of effortless mastery, a school of thought that I am very deeply connected to. I studied with Kenny Werner. I'm part of the Effortless Mastery Institute retreats, and they've had a deep, deep impact on my life. And on the surface, a lot of people might argue that what I just referred to is contradictory to the concept of effortless mastery. They're not. They might seem like it on the surface, but if we dig deeper, you realize they actually go hand in hand. But that's a whole different conversation, one which is probably not within the scope of this podcast episode. But if this is something you'd like me to dig into in the future, reach out on Instagram, or mail me if you're on my mailing list, or just comment on the podcast, or just reach out. Number 5, cultivate a growth mindset, intricately connected to the point we just referred to. Stay open to learning and evolving. Embrace new modalities, new genres, new techniques, new perspectives, and keep your artistry fresh and dynamic. Bit of a oversimplification there, but this is something to genuinely consider down the line as well. You want to make sure you're keeping things fresh and you're trying out new things, which is not to say you should always skip from one theme to another. Procrastination is not mythology. A lot of us tend to self-destruct or distract ourselves from something that needs focus by trying to juggle way too many things at the same time. So it's a fine line there. I think most of us are intimately familiar with that list of half-baked songs in our library or half-baked works. Whereas we'd actually benefit a lot more if we just finished that one song instead. Not all black and white, and actually some artists do thrive by working on multiple songs at the same time. I digress a little, but the point I'm trying to make is you do want to keep your input fresh. So you want diverse influences, you want to keep an open mind, a broad mind, but also stay focused on what it is you're practicing. So those were my 5 tips to make sure you don't fall prey to excess competition and start viewing your artistic practice as a sport. In conclusion, while art and sport may actually share surface similarities, their fundamental differences underscore the unique beauty and freedom of artist expression. For us artists, recognizing these distinctions are essential for gaining a compass for navigating this landscape of our careers, which seems to be getting crazier every day. Not the worst thing. This is not me being cynical. This is not me being jaded. This is not me being pessimistic. This is just me stating the fact that the industry and our artistic practices are changing at breakneck speed. So it is important that we stay awake and that we embrace adaptability to all of these changes that are being thrown upon us, and being very clear on what art is, that is not a competition, that it's not a sport, could be a very integral step in helping you gaining the clarity that you might need. Hope that helps.
Hey folks, I hope you found that episode helpful. Here's a little request. If you did, consider sharing this episode with your folks. Think about the ways in which they might benefit the way you did. And please don't ever hesitate to reach out if you have queries. My name's TL. I'm an independent musician and educator and the founder of the Holistic Musician Academy.